The dawn breaks over the Ngorongoro Crater, painting the sky with the first lights of the day. The vastness of this colossal caldera, formed millions of years ago, is a spectacle of wild beauty, a land where life and death coexist in a relentless cycle. Amid this landscape, shadows begin to move, revealing the inhabitants of this natural arena: zebras, wildebeests, elephants, and above all, lions, the true lords of this land. But among all the lions that roam the savannah, there is one that stands out, one that Maasai elders whisper about with reverence and awe. His name is Sekekama. It's no ordinary lion. He is bigger, stronger, and there is something about his presence that makes even the bravest of warriors hesitate. His mane, black as the moonless night, is not just an ornament. It is a sign of a force that goes beyond the physical, an omen of power and danger. Ngorongoro, with its extraordinary biodiversity, is a cauldron where only the fittest survive. Here, lions play a crucial role. They are the regulators, the top predators, who maintain the delicate balance of this closed ecosystem. And within that hierarchy, Sekekama rose as a legend, not just for his strength, but for something deeper, more primal. From an early age, Sekekama proved to be different. His muscularity, his cunning, his leadership abilities, everything about him indicated that he was not like the others. The scars on his body are testimony to the countless battles he faced and won. But what really sets him apart is his ability to anticipate his opponent's movements, as if he could predict every strike, every hunting move with frightening precision. But what makes Sekekama a true enigma is not just his physical strength. It is his sharp mind, his ability to adapt and dominate any situation, that makes him a mutant among his kind. His black mane is a reflection of something deeper, possibly a rare mutation, an anomaly that has given him not only an imposing appearance, but an advantage over his rivals that no one yet fully understands. In Ngorongoro, where survival is a daily battle, Sekekama has become an almost mythical figure. Safari guides tell stories of his bravery, of how he single-handedly faced coalitions of rival males, of how his dark shadow is enough to scatter entire packs of hyenas with a single glance. The Maasai herders speak of him as if he were a force of nature, something that goes beyond simple human understanding, as if Sekekama were an ancient spirit, incarnated in a lion's body to protect and govern the crater. Sekekama is not just a lion, he is a living legend, and like all legends, its story is shrouded in mystery, danger, and a brute force that defies any attempt at simple understanding. With each day, with each new challenge that arises in the savannas of Ngorongoro, Sekekama continues to reign, a true ruler of a kingdom where the law is merciless and weakness is fatal. Hey guys, it means a lot to me that you're here watching, and I'm excited to keep doing it for you. If you want to support me and help with my channel, please subscribe to my channel. Your support would mean a lot and give me the motivation to continue on this adventure. This is the story of Sekekama, the mutant of Ngorongoro, a king who was crowned not by any human, but by nature itself. And, as in every good story, what follows is a story of power, of struggle, of survival in its purest and most raw form. Sekekama is more than a lion. He is a symbol, an enigma, an unstoppable force in the wild heart of Africa. Sekekama was not born to be a king. He became one. From the beginning, he was different. With every step he took in the savannah, something about him caught his attention. As a puppy, while others played carelessly, Sekekama watched. His eyes, so deep and attentive, seemed to absorb every detail of the world around him, as if he already knew that life there offered no second chances. The first time he came to prominence was during a relentless drought that ravaged Ngorongoro. The rains did not come, and the rivers dried up, leaving the earth hard and brittle. Life in the crater became even harder. Herbivores began to migrate in search of better pastures, and predators became hungry. It was in this hostile environment that Sekekama, still young and inexperienced, first showed his true nature. While other lions waited for their elders to lead, Sekekama acted. He didn't just hunt, He hunted with lethal precision, taking advantage of the weakness and desperation of his prey. His first solo kill was a defining moment. An adult, healthy zebra that other lions would not have dared to face alone. But Sekekama was not like the others. With frightening cunning and surprising strength for his age, he overthrew the zebra, making it clear that his place among the leaders would not be achieved by inheritance, but by merit. As he grew, Sekekama's reputation also increased. He wasn't just strong, he was strategic, a thinker who calculated every move. When the time came to challenge the leader of the gang, many thought it was too soon, that he was rushing into things. But Sekekama knew what he was doing. The duel was quick, brutal. The previous leader, who was already in decline, had no chance. Sekekama took him down in minutes, taking control of the gang with the ease of someone born for the role. But leading a band in Ngorongoro is a task that requires more than physical strength. The crater, with its abundance of life, is also a ceaseless battlefield, where each day brings a new challenge. Sekekama faced coalitions of rival males who came from afar, attracted by the promise of easy prey and fertile females. They found not a complacent leader, but a fierce warrior whose strategy was as lethal as his blows. One of Sekekama's most memorable battles was against a coalition of 3 males who invaded his territory during one of the dry seasons. Sekekama knew that alone, his chances were slim. So he did the unthinkable. He ambushed them. Using the crater's dense vegetation to his advantage, he isolated one of the males, the youngest and most impetuous, and attacked him with a fury that seemed almost supernatural. The sound of the clash echoed across the savannah, and by the time the other 2 males arrived to help, it was too late. Sekekama had already won. This victory cemented his position not just as a leader, but as a living legend. From then on, few dared to challenge him directly. He was the undisputed king of Ngorongoro, but his reign was not based on strength alone. It was a delicate balance between terror and respect. Sekekama ruled with rare intelligence, knowing when to fight and when to retreat, when to show clemency and when to be ruthless. Over the years, Sekekama has built a legacy that few could match. He cared for his pack, not just as a leader, but as a protector. His offspring were strong, and he taught them not only to hunt, but to survive in the brutal world into which they were born. He shaped them in his image, passing on to them not just his genes, but his wisdom and cunning. But like every great story, Sekekama's is also marked by challenges and sacrifices. In one of the harshest drought seasons Ngorongoro has ever seen, Sekekama faced a dilemma few leaders would face. With food scarce and rivalries escalating, he had to make decisions that tested the limits of his leadership. He led risky hunts, moving the pack into dangerous areas where other predators lurked. He risked everything to ensure the survival of those under his protection, and it was during one of these hunts that Sekekama faced perhaps the greatest challenge of his life. A hyena, an old enemy of lions, challenged him. But this was no ordinary hyena. She was the matriarch of a clan that had, for years, avoided direct confrontation with Sekekama. But hunger drives everyone to despair. The clash was fierce, a true duel of the titans. Sekekama emerged victorious, but not without consequences. He would carry the scars of this battle for the rest of his life, reminding him that even the strongest of kings face the inexorable wear and tear of time. As the years passed, Sekekama began to age. His black mane, once thick and intimidating, began to show signs of wear, with strands of silver mixing into the black. But even as he aged, Sekekama maintained his power and leadership. He was now a living legend, a king who everyone knew would one day leave his throne. But until then, he would continue to rule with the same wisdom and strength that made him immortal in the minds of all who knew him. The story of Sekekama is the story of a leader forged in the fire of adversity, a mutant whose existence defies the norms of nature, a lion whose legend will live on even after he leaves the plains of Ngorongoro. His life is a reminder that on the savannah, physical strength is important, but true royalty is shaped by the mind and heart. The Ngorongoro Crater, with its vast skies and endless horizon, has always been the scene of epic clashes. But no confrontation was more anticipated, more feared, than the one that was about to take place. Sekekama, now in his prime, faced the greatest challenge of his life. The savannah was silent, as if nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. The news spread quickly. A new coalition of males, young and fierce, had entered Ngorongoro. They weren't from here. They were outsiders, coming from the most arid lands to the north, where survival forges the cruelest type of warrior. The Maasai, who observed these lions with a mixture of respect and fear, called them the Shadows, for their ability to move without being seen, attacking with deadly precision. For them, facing Sekekama was not just an ambition, it was a necessity. To rule Ngorongoro, the king would have to be overthrown. Sekekama, now a battle veteran, knew time was against him. His muscles were still powerful, and his cunning remained sharp, but he could not ignore the signs of aging. The scars from previous battles ached on the cold nights, and his once sharp fangs were beginning to show the first signs of wear. But the spirit that had made him a legend still burned brightly within him. He wouldn't back down, not while there was life in his body. The first encounters with the new coalition were brief, skirmishes where both parties tested each other's strengths. Sekekama led his band with tactical precision, keeping the young males at a distance, but without confronting them directly. He knew that open battle would mean death for many of his people, perhaps even for himself. But the outsiders were impatient. They hadn't come to play the game of survival. They came to conquer. And then, one sultry afternoon, just as the sun was about to set, the inevitable happened. Sekekama was at the head of his pack, the females and young following closely behind. He smelled enemies before he saw them, a bitter and strong smell of young lions full of adrenaline. He stopped, raised his head and roared, a deep roar which echoed across the hills and made the hearts of those who heard it tremble. This was a rallying call, a challenge the young males could not ignore. Shadows appeared on the horizon, their figures dark against the burning sky. 3 of them, all imposing, with muscles rippling beneath their golden skins. They were powerful, but Sekekama had something they had not yet achieved: experience and a strategic mind. But the young men were tireless, and in their eyes there was a gleam of cruelty that only lions who grew up in deprivation carry. They wanted more than just to defeat Sekekama. They wanted to destroy it. The fight that followed was epic, a battle of titans that the Ngorongoro Crater would never forget. Sekekama, despite his years, fought with the ferocity of a young lion, using all his experience to exploit his opponent's weaknesses. He moved with impressive speed, attacking and retreating, forcing the young males to follow his pace. He left no room for error, because he knew that a single slip could be the end of him. But the young males were merciless. They surrounded Sekekama, attacking from all sides, forcing him to fight 3 enemies at once. The other lions in Sekekama's pride watched helplessly, knowing that this was a battle that only the great king could fight. The roars and sounds of fighting filled the air, creating a symphony of violence and despair. Then, at the most critical moment, Sekekama did something no one expected. He chose not to face all 3 at once. Using his cunning, he separated one of the males, the more impetuous one, and lured him into denser territory where tall vegetation offered cover. There, he turned on the young man with renewed fury. This was the Sekekama the ancients feared, the warrior whose power lay as much in his strength as in his mind. In a quick and brutal fight, he knocked the young male down, seriously injuring him. The other 2, upon realizing what happened, hesitated. This hesitation was all Sekekama needed. He returned to the open field with his enemy's blood still on his claws, and his mere presence reminded the other 2 of why he was king. They attacked again, but this time Sekekama was in control. He wore them down, using his experience to avoid their most powerful attacks while counterattacking with precision. The fight seemed to last an eternity, but in the end, Sekekama remained standing, injured, bleeding, but victorious. The shadows had been defeated. 2 of them fled, humiliated and injured, leaving behind the companion whom Sekekama had defeated alone. The crater was silent again, and Sekekama, his eyes dark with exhaustion, looked at his band. He was the king still, but for how long? The price of victory was high. Sekekama knew time was running out. He was alive, but weakened. The wound he carried from his confrontation with the hyena still throbbed, and now new scars adorned his body. He looked at the horizon, where the sun was setting, and felt a sadness he had never experienced before. He knew that although he had won this battle, the war for survival was never over. The savannah is cruel and unforgiving, and Sekekama's throne, although still firm, was beginning to show cracks. He would lead his band for a while longer, pass on his knowledge to the younger ones. But the cycle of life was relentless. He who had ruled with wisdom and strength was now at the mercy of time, the only enemy no king can defeat. As night fell over Ngorongoro, Sekekama lay down, exhausted, feeling the weight of years on his shoulders. He knew his reign was coming to an end, but he also knew his legend would live on forever. Sekekama, the mutant of Ngorongoro, had faced all the challenges that life imposed on him, and even though the end was near, he would be remembered as the greatest of all, the lion who defied nature itself and won. The darkness that enveloped Ngorongoro Crater brought with it a heavy silence, as if the land itself was honoring the wounded king. Sekekama, now covered in scars, new and old, lay beneath the starry sky, his deep, rhythmic breaths mixing with the night breeze. He had won, but not without paying a heavy price. The weight of years and battles was felt in every muscle, in every bone. The strength that previously seemed infinite now began to slowly dissipate. But even in his weakened state, Sekekama was no ordinary lion. He was the mutant of Ngorongoro, and his story had already reached beyond the limits of the crater, echoing through the accounts of safari guides, the stories of the Maasai, and the studies of biologists who witnessed his reign. He wasn't just a leader, it was a living myth, a symbol of power and resilience that defied the laws of nature. In the days following the battle, Sekekama led his band with quiet determination. He knew that time was short, that every moment was precious. There were young lions in their pride who needed to be prepared for what was to come. He guided them patiently, transmitting not only hunting techniques, but also the wisdom acquired throughout a life of constant challenges. He taught them that survival depended on both strength and mind, that a true leader knows when to fight and when to retreat. As the months passed, Sekekama began to gradually step away from direct leadership responsibilities. He watched from a distance as young people took on more prominent roles, testing their abilities and, in some cases, making mistakes that he himself had made in the past. But he was always close by, ready to intervene if necessary, ensuring that his legacy of strength and wisdom would not be forgotten. However, the savannah, always merciless, continued to follow its course. The signs of Sekekama's decline were evident. His wounds took longer to heal, his hunts became less frequent, and the fatigue that he once managed to shake off now accompanied him constantly. But even so, he stood his ground. He didn't want his pack to see him as weak. He wanted to be remembered as the king he always was. Finally, the day that everyone feared, but that Sekekama knew was inevitable, arrived. He was alone, lying under an ancient acacia tree, watching the sun set for the last time. Golden light bathed his imposing body, and he closed his eyes, feeling the peace that came with acceptance. He had lived a life that few could equal, a life of power, of struggle, but also of greatness. Sekekama, the mutant of Ngorongoro, inspired fear and respect in equal measure. He defied all odds, survived every battle, and most importantly, he ruled with a wisdom that went beyond brute force. His legend would be passed down from generation to generation, not just among the lions, but among everyone who lived in the shadow of the crater. With one last breath, Sekekama closed his eyes, letting the darkness envelop him. And as night settled over Ngorongoro, the savannah seemed to recognize his departure. The wind blew softly, as if it were carrying the king's spirit with it. He was gone, but his presence, his story, would remain forever, etched into the rocks and plains of the crater. Sekekama's band, led now by those he himself had prepared, continued to roam the Ngorongoro plains. They followed the paths he charted, hunted in the same lands he conquered, and faced challenges with the courage he taught them. But whenever the wind blew through the hills, it brought with it a memory, a whisper of a name that would never be forgotten. The story of Sekekama, the mutant of Ngorongoro, was not just the story of a lion. It was the story of a force of nature, proof that, in the midst of adversity, true greatness emerges from those who have the courage to challenge the limits and rules of the world around them. He was a king without a crown, but with the respect of everyone who crossed his path. And so, even in death, Sekekama continued to reign over Ngorongoro, not as a tyrant, but as a legend that will never die. And we have reached the end of another documentary. If you liked it, leave in the comments what else you want to see here, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you support us.